see what the rest of chapter 11 is after verse 9. What's all that rest of that stuff in there?
Table of Nations.
All right, all that stuff of the nations and the genealogy. And you come on down, you get to a certain place, you begin to see whose name come up. You begin to see Abram's name come up. And Abram is your next big character in the book of Genesis. Now, last time we decided, I think we've got Abram and Isaac. We'll go ahead and call him Abraham for simple right now. Abraham and Isaac. Then we've got Jacob. Then we've got Joseph. So we know we got that from Genesis 12 to the end of the book, right? Okay, now then, what are we going to do with these first 11 chapters? We could go through and we could have... Let me just show you. I'll get it together here. We could have a lesson on the Tower of Babel, the scattering of the nations, and we could review, and then we could have, and this is number 7 right there, it's almost faded out, you see that? We could have the next period, the next class, a little quiz or a little test. Exam's too big a word, and listen, it'll blow kids out of the water. Just say exams. They think that that's like, at the end of the year. So a test. Don't say, that's not a good word to use. Test. We'll have a test. So you have a test at the beginning of the period. But then, what could you do the last part of the period? You could set it up to get ready to move into your next big unit. You got your... Now, see, you can have a lesson that doesn't have to have a big truth to it, but where you're covering information just to get like a bridge and to keep the story together and just introduce that. And you could easily do that. So you see how that could work at the tail end? What you'd do, you'd have your lesson on Tower of Babel, then you'd have your review, then the beginning of the period the next day you'd have your test, then you'd have whatever you need to set up for your next unit. You're going to go into Abraham and Isaac, and you're going to go into the rest of it where you're zeroing in on Abraham. All right, now, if we're going to do that, what are we going to do from Genesis 1 till we get there, to Genesis 9? Together in your groups, talk about it among yourselves. And I've already boxed you in. You can't have, you already know what your 6th lesson is, you know what your 7th lesson is. And remember that your lesson number 1 is your introductory lesson. So what you're going to have is, you're going to have 2, 3, 4, 5. Come up with 2, 3, 4, 5. Come up with 4 lessons. 4 lessons, beginning of Genesis 1, going to Genesis 9. Go up with 4 lessons. Together, talk among yourselves and see how you might divide it up. Now, this is the need of a Bible that's got those titles in it, got those headings in it. How are we going to divide this up? How are we going to put this together? Yes, sir. Pardon? Oh, lesson 6? Excuse me. Lesson 6, Tower of Babel. Sorry. Tower of Babel. See, we're in Unit 1 of Genesis, chapters 1 to 11. And we're going to try to divide it up now and decide what we're going to do with lessons until we get here. Lesson 6. Talk it over together and see how you come up with it. Lesson 7. So we just have all. All right, if you look back up here, here was the sheet I was looking for that I couldn't find. Now we're ready to start class. Genesis curriculum, lesson numbers, you've got your introductory lesson. Now you've got 2, 3, 4, 5. You've got your Tower of Babel. You know what you're going to do here. You're going to review. You're going to have a little quiz here. You're going to introduce and bridge your ready for Genesis, your second big section, and you're reviewing your final exam at the very end. So what are we going to do? What are we going to do with those? All right, let's see. What do you want to do for your first lesson? What? All right, we'll go with creation. What chapters? All right, chapters 1 and 2. Everybody agree? All right, I don't think you'd have too much problem with that, because what you want to do, your lesson, you want to hold together and have something very specific and very definite. Now let's come up with a title. Remember, our title needs to be very factual. Creation is fine, but it probably would be better to say God created the world and placed man on it, something like that, man and woman on it. But just something, we can say creation, we would all know, but God made the world and placed man, God made the heavens and the earth and placed man on the earth, something like that. Just something that gives you your meaning. All right, now then, what do you want to do next? What you want to do next? All right, fall. Now, we are all Bible college students, and we all know the word fall. Let's give it another name. Who and what? Adam and Eve disobeyed God's law about the eating of the fruit of the tree. Okay, now realize you can just keep going. But Adam and Eve disobeyed God in the eating of it. Now, what are you going to, where's that lesson going to go? It's going to start where? Chapter 3. And then what are you going to do with it? How far are you going to go with it? How far you want to go with it? End of what, Doris? End of chapter 3, Doris says. Anybody have anything else?
We talked about maybe including even some of the results like Cain and Abel and sin.
Okay, keep talking. Why would you what might you want to do there?
Well, I think I did decide that we need to spend more time looking at some of the other places in the middle, so we decided to combine fall and things Cain and Abel and Seth.
Okay, Cain and Abel and Seth. What you got in mind? Where you going to stop that lesson? How far might you go with it? Go ahead, Brandon. All right, Mark?
The end of chapter 6.
The end of chapter 6. Would you want to go all the way to the end of chapter 6?
Well, to chapter verse 8.
Ah.
Verse 8 of chapter 6.
All right. Now, what would that do? Now, let's look at it two ways. What you can do is, you've got here, we call it the fall, but we can't say fall. We've got to call it sin of Adam and Eve. Now, if you keep going and you go all the way through chapter 3, down to 6, 7 or 8, 6, 8, actually, you're talking about the sin of Adam and Eve and what? The spread of sin. All right, the progression of sin. Now let me show you.
Spread.
All right, let me show you something. You start with Adam and Eve, and then your lesson would basically look like this. It would be Adam and Eve and their sin. And then it gets worse. Cain and Abel. And then it gets worse. It gets worse. Until finally you come up with the flood. Now, that's possible. You can do that. You could also do the other where you would have Genesis chapter 3, and it would be just chapter 3, because what is in chapter 3 that you might feel that you're going to need to spend a little time on? The promise. See? The promise, the first promise is there, and you're going to set it up because you've got your big overall story you're trying to get across, so you might need some more time for that. Now, do you see what you do? Remember what you remember what the word is? You remember what the word is about all this stuff that we do? We plan these lesson titles, and we say they are what kind of lesson titles? Oh, thank you. Tentative. Tentative means subject to change. And so what you're going to do, what you're going to do is you'll start off and you'll put it together and you say, all right, I'm going to do it like this. Then when you begin to work with your material, you may realize, oh, I'm going to have to change that a little bit. I'll do this. That's okay. That's okay. But then if we do that, what will we do for our next verse, for our next lesson?
If we do what?
All right, good. If we do what? If we do this, if we do chapter 3 through 6, 8, we've got 4 and 5, lessons 4 and 5. You've got Noah in there. here's how you decide. Because actually what you would do with 4 and 5, it would be you'd have 2 lessons on Noah, right? You'd have to decide some way. I mean, you could divide those up that way because, see, boom, you're going to run into the Tower of Babel here. And so here's where you work at it. You say, all right, do I want 2 lessons on Noah and just quickly go over this? Or do I want to take Adam and Eve, chapter 3, then take another lesson that's going to show the progression of sin and set it up, and then put Noah in one lesson? All right, I see some ahas. All right, let's just take a look at this. Let's take a look at this. You can do it like what we just said now. Here's our creation of the world and Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve sin and their separation from God and God's promise. Cain kills Abel and is punished. And you could, notice this now. A bridge is put in here that traces that progression. You see that? You could also take that and you could put that at the end of this lesson, because here Cain, and he kills Abel. And if you study that lesson, look at my hands, you will see that in Cain's life it was like this. And he did this, and God gave him a chance to do the right thing, and he didn't, and then it gets worse, and then finally, and he kills his brother, and then all this. And you could just keep that little thing going, and you just say, and within the families that followed Adam and Eve, it just got worse and worse and worse and worse until you're ready for the flood. But you can do it that way. Then the flood comes in the tower, or you can do what we said here, that you would put in the growth and the spread of sin, and teach the lesson of Noah in one lesson. Now, let me ask you this. Can you teach the lessons on Noah in one lesson? Sure. Sure. You see, we're not having a Bible study. Drop your voice, Mary. We're not having a Bible study of every verse and every chapter. We're not having a college inductive Bible study. We're trying to set up something that we would do for a group of students, perhaps upper elementary, junior high, high school, and we're just trying to get them the big overall picture. Now, granted, if we went back and we had more time, fine, but we're pretending that we've got a survey we're doing. We've got a survey class that we're doing, and that's all the time we're going to have for the book of Genesis. What you do is you learn how to do 2 things, folks, when you have a big passage. So you've got a big passage right there. You've got chapter 6 through 9, 17. You learn how to select out big things and then how to emphasize what you need to emphasize to get your point across. And so when you use those 2 ideas, selecting it and realizing I can't cover everything, but I need this, I need this, I need this, I need this, and then I want to emphasize this and this, and then I can get across the point that I want to get across from a book, from a lesson. All right, now, that's Genesis 1 to 11. That's how it could be. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go to the next sections. Who has Abraham and Isaac? All right, these 2 folks right here. All right, who has Jacob? You folks right here, and then y'all have Joseph. All right, good. Now, what we're going to do is to take our next step, and we're going to decide on where we're going to divide up for these. Okay, you're going to do Abraham and Isaac, you're going to do Jacob, you're going to do Joseph. Okay, together, beginning in Genesis chapter 12, because you see we've used this now as our little bridge, we've got our little unit, we've got our next step set up. And we're going to start to study the life of Abraham, the life of Abram. Now, you folks over here, you decide together, look at your Bibles, how far are your lessons on Abraham going to go? You're going to start at chapter 12, how many chapters are you going to go? Okay, you folks decide where you're going to start with Jacob and how far you're going to go. And you folks know you're going to end with Genesis 50. All right, find out where you're going to start for Joseph. All right, together, y'all find out what you're going to do.
Jacob starts at 25. The birth is not Jacob, it's 25. That's what you said, in chapter 7. And at the end, we're going to quit.
Oh, I just heard a key word. I just heard a key word. I heard the word exam. I heard the word test. All right now, when you get through with your bunch, get through with your lessons, what you gonna do?
Quit them.
You're gonna have a quiz. You're gonna have a review and a quiz. What y'all gonna do when you get through? You're gonna have a review and a quiz. What you gonna do when y'all get through? Now look, are we gonna have a full period review and a full period quiz? And a full period review and a full period quiz? And a full period review and a full period quiz? And then our last 2 lessons, have another big review for the whole thing and then a final exam? No, we'll just quiz them to death if we do that. We'll test them to death if we do that. So, what could we do though? At the end of your section, you could have a review and a quiz in one day. At the end of your section, you can have a review and a quiz in one day. Your section, you can have a review and a quiz, and I'll show you, we'll come back there and show you all what you can do with Joseph just in a minute. Because Joseph's life is going to be what's going to be studied just before here. And what you can do is, I'll go ahead and tell all of you this. The last part of the life of Joseph, would you look at chapter 50? Everybody just turn there to chapter 50 of Genesis. If you will look, it's down toward the end of the chapter. I don't have my good Bible with me. It's down. Okay, look at verse 15. When you hit Genesis 50:15, that's the very end of Joseph's life, and it comes, it wraps it all up. And it's in that time when brothers come to him, and they say, oh, we're really afraid the father, the father was dead now. And then Joseph makes a comment, and Joseph makes a comment, and he says, you meant it to me to be evil, God meant it good. So, and he wraps up his whole life right there. What you can do is, you can teach that last part of that in Joseph's life as your lesson. Then you can take that verse that he says right there. What is the verse that he says? He says, fear not the unfaithful God that is for you. You meant it for good, you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good to bring a pass, saving posterity. You can take that and you can use that then as the springboard to go back and watch and review all the life of Joseph. What were the bad things that had happened? What is the good thing that God has done? See how you can do that? And you could review the whole life of Joseph like that. Not do any testing, but whenever you have gone back then the next day and you've tied your whole book of Genesis together, and you maybe got a new view of the whole book, and you tied the whole thing all together, you did a quiz, and know what they're going to have, you know exactly what they're going to have, someone's still going to miss it, but you're going to know exactly what they're going to have in the review. Then the last part, you can have a test, but you can spend most of your time of the test on the details of Joseph that you haven't tested yet. Did you follow all of that? Be sure you did, because that's very important. Did you think you got it? Okay. Now, that is to show you, so when you got the end, that you have a review and test in one period. You have a review and test in one period. You have a review over the life of Joseph, your last class of Joseph lessons, and then you will test Joseph at the last thing. Okay? Is everybody about decided where you want your chapters to be? You need any more time for that, or you think you got it? Okay?
How much time do we have?
Okay. I was wondering when you were going to ask me that. See, you don't know how many lessons you're going to have. Right now, that doesn't really matter. All we want to know is the chapters. What are our chapters? What are we going to cover? What are we going to cover? Now, we know in Genesis 1 to 11, we've got those right there. Now we're ready for Genesis 12 through 50. What chapters are you going to cover? Okay, Abraham and Isaac, people, what chapters are you going to cover? You're going to go chapter 12 through what? Abraham, Isaac, what you want to give me a suggestion?
And we don't
got Abraham and Isaac. How far are you going to go? You folks decided where you're going to start over here, where you're going to stop?
25:19.
All right. How far y'all going to go?
Where you gonna stop?
We're going to go all the way through Matthew.
How many lessons are there?
I haven't told you yet. Haven't told you yet. You don't have to worry about the number of lessons yet. All I want to know is what chapters are you going to start with and what chapters are you going to close with? Yes. Well, okay, all right.
28.
All right, everybody listen up here.
Or 28.
Missy just said, do we finish off their lives? Do you want them dead? All right, now, here's the point. You very well may discover that the main character of a certain sections of chapters will be that, but his death won't come until later when you've already got this other character, really, obviously the main character of that. So you would put that in, but what chapters are primarily Abraham, Isaac chapters? What chapters are primarily Jacob chapters? What chapters are primarily Joseph chapters? Now yours is quite simple back there. We can go back to them. All right, let's quickly decide now. Okay, let's stop right here and you folks decide. How far are you going to go, Abraham and Isaac? How far? How far you want to go? 12 to 26. 12 to 26. What do you folks think over here? Okay, all right, now, you people over here, listen. 12 to 26, they're going to claim for Abraham and Isaac. Y'all going to let them have those?
No. Stop at 25:19.
All right, now.
Sorry.
Look at 25:19. You see what your situation is? But now let me explain something to you, how you can easily handle this. You start at 12, you go through 26 for Abraham and Isaac. Isaac really is, the birth of the boys, the birth of the twins, is really sort of like Isaac's having the children. And you could go ahead and let them have 26, and then you could start it in 27, where you have actually Jacob starting in the act. Is that where he sells the birthright and so forth? Or is that 25? 26? This is terrible.
Let's go through what? 36.
All right, they want to stop at 25, and I've got 26. Okay, we can negotiate over chapter 25. We can negotiate over chapter 25, but chapter 25 takes you down.
And you said it turned out to be.
You said 25, how far, Sean?
25:19. That's what we were about. But if they want to do our review.
Why don't you go ahead to 27?
Okay.
You can go ahead to 27. You see that? Did y'all agree with that?
We're going to have a fill in the blank test verse 36. He saw us to send it.
All right, now, if you do, if you do go down through this, you could go 25, and what was the first number? 27. 27, is that right? Okay, and so what you could do that because then you pick it up where Esau, where Jacob sells his blessing and goes from it. Then if you do that, where would you begin then for Jacob? And go, how far would you go with Jacob?
35:15.
All right, they said that they would go 27 or 25 to what? To where?
Chapter 35:15.
35:15. All right, does that pretty well get you? Okay, 35:15. You can do that, and actually you can go ahead to the rest of the chapter if you wanted to. Just to basically cover it. So, you folks back here, what y'all gonna do?
We're not starting with 37.
You're not gonna start with 37 because that's Joseph, where
We're
Joseph
going to
is.
start before then.
You gonna start before then?
Yes.
Where you gonna start?
We think we would like to use chapter 35, the end of 35 as a bridge, where it gives Jacob 12 sons.
Okay.
Joseph is mentioned there, and then we basically skip 36. Essentially, we wouldn't teach through the genealogy of Esau, and then we go straight
Right.
to Jacob.
Exactly right. That's fine. That's very, very good. That's very, very good. Because you can take that and make your bridge, you introduce the sons, you can go into Joseph, that's just great. But obviously, the story of Joseph starts where? 37. So that's very good. So now we go 37 down through 50, and the chances are you would do what?
Omitting 38.
You'd probably omit 38 because it's about Judah. Now, everybody look back up here. The question you keep wanting to know is, how many lessons do we have? Well, I have arbitrarily given you your lesson numbers, and they can go a little back and forth. We're going to say for Abraham and Isaac, lesson number 8, so say 14 or 15. But your last one is going to be a review and a test, remember. Then Jacob, you can start with 15 or 16, and you can go through 21, and include for that last one a review or a test. And then Joseph, 21, 22, and go to 28. Now everybody turn quickly to your blue sheets. Those of you that are leaders, number 3 is important to you about the mechanics. But everybody needs to turn to number 10 on the last page. And there are 3 big cautions. All right, you ready? Number 1, 2 difficult sections to make flow in the Genesis unit are chapters 12 through 24. Abraham, Lot, Ishmael, and Isaac. Remember we talked about that earlier? That you could put everything on Lot together and then continue your story? Also, chapters 25, 19 through chapter 36, Jacob, Esau, and Laban, as a lot of stuff goes on in there. You can't possibly cover it all. What you have to do is you have to find the crucial steps to get them to work. The big, crucial steps. It won't all work, so you can't do it. You can't get them all in there. And then look at Genesis 37 to 50. That's a section that's difficult to break into good lessons. Do not use up all the lessons on Joseph in 3 or 4 and then try to put 3 or 4 lessons. So that's what I've done for you here. I've told you how many you can have. The tendency is when you're doing this yourself, you'll start at the top and there's a classmate of mine out there from 19, I don't tell you when, I haven't seen since he graduated. Come on. I just want to introduce y'all. Dr. and Mrs. Mark Harlan. Step in here, please. These folks graduated, Miriam graduated with me, and I don't know how when. And Dr. Harlan. We're so happy to have you visit my class. And I look forward to seeing y'all in a few minutes. Great. Wonderful. I'll let you see the classroom, too. Oh, we go way back, folks. We go way back. It's exciting. Okay, Genesis 37 to 50 is a section difficult to break into good lessons. Don't use up all your lessons before you get there. Because you've got to have at least 5 lessons on Joseph. You really do. Because if you don't, you're not going to get, you have to have at least that many to cover his life well. Now, look at number 3. There are 2 listings of Genesis lesson titles in the resource book. These are not necessarily how you will or should do your Genesis unit. Everybody read the last sentence with me. Do not read them before you prepare your titles. All right. Now then, here's what we're going to do. You've got your section. You've got your groups. You are to put together the lessons for your group like we did the Genesis 1 to 11. And the leader is going to be responsible for pulling it all together and giving it to me. It's going to be due Friday. We're going to have about 5 minutes now, it's a little bit more than that you can get started and sort of understand what you're doing. But you can get back together again, and I would suggest you try to do it tomorrow at 11 o'clock if you possibly can. Because this period tomorrow is not, this room is free and you can use this room if you want to. So check with each other, be sure you can meet tomorrow at 11. It works out very ideally. And then you get together in your group and you finish out your section, making the titles with the scripture references for your lessons. Tell me whatever bridges you want to use, whatever. Okay? All right? Check it out with each other and get started and see what you've got.
The leader is going to do along with the others.
Set the pace to.
Yeah.
These things.